We have seen the activity diagram before with an example, and I have shortly explained the initial concepts. The example for an activity diagram was the explanation of what happens inside the operation init that initializes a profile object. The profile object has three attributes: first name, last name, username, and accordingly the init operation has three parameters: a first name, a last name, a username. And what the init operation simply does, it assigns the parameter to the respective attribute. And you see here that this is a soil implementation. This is soil, simple OCL-based imperative language. And you see here it's the language uses assignments, really imperative assignments. The speciality for the language is that OCL expressions are used all over the way. So on the right-hand side of an assignment, you can have an arbitrary OCL expression. An arbitrary complex OCL expressions and OCL expressions are used within soil also in other positions. This soil operation is visualized here by this activity diagram with with an initial node, with a final node, with action nodes, and the action nodes reflect exactly the order in which the assignments have been done. An alternative could be to represent the actions in a different manner, because here we have the case that the right-hand sides do not depend on each other. The right-hand side of the assignments are independent of each other. And you can do the assignments in any of the 6 orders, any of the 6 permutations that is determined here by these 3 statements. And there is an option to give an activity diagram and whose semantics is, so to speak, any of the 3 orders. And the split, there are two further elements in the activity diagram, namely the fork and the join element. And the flow of control splits here and is brought together over here. The flow of control is split by the fork and is joined again by the join node. And so you can have these assignments in any order. There are further language elements in activity diagrams. They are called merge nodes and they are decision nodes. And you see an example over here. And with this example, we will see that the activity diagrams are very close to what you may have learned in the starting course when you started to study computer science, and in terms of a flowchart diagram or a flowchart. The example that I'm going to present here is an example where we have a for loop. We have the publish operation in the profile is intended to publish exactly one posting. And that means exactly the original publish operation has one parameter, which is a string. And what the publish operation does is that it generates a new posting object it manipulates attributes in the posting object, and then it connects the new posting object to the profile that has been calling the publish operation. This is a variation here where the publish operation does not have a single post text that is going to be published, but the parameter here is a sequence of strings. So with this operation you cannot publish only one posting, but you could publish 3 postings with one operation call. And this is an example for another OCL collection kind here. And another example where you see that this is soil, and another example where you see that soil is able to handle not only OCL expressions, but also OCL types, arbitrary OCL types. So the type of the parameter here is sequence of string. What is going on in the operation is as follows. We declare 2 variables. P is a posting, S is a string. And with this variable S, we iterate over the sequence of strings that is given here as a parameter S in a post text sequence. So when we, for example, would have called publish stack with a sequence of 3 strings, this loop here would go over this sequence of 3 strings, and the S would take the first string, the second string, and then the third string. Inside the loop, what is going on? We assign the variable P here. We generate a new posting and we record the new posting in the variable P. Then we manipulate the attribute posting of the P, and we assign the S, with which we have iterated over the sequence of strings. We assign it, the S is assigned to the attribute posting of the posting P, and as a last step we take the self. The self is the object on which the publish sequence operation was called. We insert the self and the P into poster posting. Let's have a short look at the object diagram. So this operation is responsible for, first for manipulating here this attribute, and for generating the posting, for manipulating the attribute, and for establishing this link here, because the operation publish is called on, for example, on the Merkel object. This should give an impression how this operation works. And what I've done here in the graphical part, I have represented this soil operation with the elements of UML activity diagrams. So we have here the declaration, and then we have here a decision node, and the decision node checks whether in the sequence of characters here there is a next element. If this is the case, then the S is assigned, corresponding here to the text in the soil statement. The S is assigned, and then the 3 remaining statements are exactly the 3 statements that correspond exactly to the 3 action nodes which sit here in the activity diagram. Then we have a jump back to this merge node where flow of control is merged. That's why it is called a merge node. And if there are more elements in the sequence, then the process repeats. Otherwise, we reach here the the final node through the else. So, as I said before, this representation here of UML activity diagrams is very close to what is known as flowcharts or flowchart graphs, under which name you may ever have encountered these diagrams. Something what is not available in the classical flowcharts are these fork and join nodes. Okay, these were some more details about the class diagrams with respect to part-whole relationships and with respect to the state charts, with respect to guards, and with respect to activity diagrams, with respect to merge and decision nodes. So these were elements that we have not seen before. What we see here on these two slides, I've called it a template for textual model definition in use, part A and part B. I have taken the complete model definition, which is placed after these two slides. I've taken the complete model definition and I have distilled the essential parts of a use model definition. And I have displayed the respective keywords in blue. So this is on the one hand a template for textual model definition, and on the other hand these two slides emphasize and show the most important keywords that occur in a model and that are associated with particular graphical concepts that we have seen in UML. So a class is defined in use with a keyword class. It's ended by a corresponding end here. A class has attributes, a class has operations, a class has constraints, and a class can have state machines. These are the compartments of a class. An attribute has a name, a data type. It can have an initial value, and a class can an attribute can be derived. And as a derivation rule, we see here one small example, namely the attribute initials that we saw in the class diagram and in the object diagram is a derived attribute, and what the derivation goes as follows. We grab the first name of the profile, we grab from the first name the first letter with the string operation, substring 1 from position to position, and we concatenate this. So this is the first letter of the first name, and we concatenate it with the first letter of the last name. This is a derived attribute. This is a specification for an initial value. The operations in a class can be specified in soil, as we see it here with these three soil statements. The operations can surely have parameters. They also could have a return type. Operations, apart from specifying a soil operations, they can have a precondition and they can have a postconditions, and both are given in terms of OCL. Pre and post conditions can have names, and they are associated with particular OCL conditions. All these parts of an operation are optional. So you can only give a precondition to an operation. You can give only a postcondition to an operation. You do not have to give a soil implementation, a precondition, or an operation postcondition. So use is very flexible in this respect. Or you can specify all three parts. In one central use of OCL constraints are invariants, and they can be specified inside the class. I have explained this invariant already here. And I've explained this also. You can associate state machines, protocol state machines with a class, and there in textual form you specify the states together with the state invariants, and you specify the transitions where you specify the pre-state and the post-state, and the transition that is going on between the pre-state and the post-state, and the transition has in general this format guard or precondition, operation, and then the postcondition of the transition. So this is for classes, the general template for classes. For the relationships between the objects, you can have an association class, which can be extended with attributes. You can have compositions between classes, and you can have associations between classes. In an association, you specify the multiplicities. In an association, you can have optionally role names. You can specify explicit role names when you do not specify role names. As role names, you get the class name with the first letter turned into a lowercase letter, and the same happens here. So I have not specified role names here, but you have the implicit role name profile and subject both starting with a lowercase letter. So that's the general form of an association, that's the general form of a composition, and that's the general form of an association class, where you, in an association class, you typically specify attributes.